and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10. It's been 10 seasons of empowering small businesses such as yourselves and hand-holding and guiding you in your growth journey. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. On the show tonight, we are talking about the budget expectations. What will it mean for India's small businesses? I'm posing those questions to some of India's most well-known corporate voices. I'm speaking with Sumant Sinha, Deepak Sood and Niranjan Hiranandani on today's episode. In this first segment, I have two special guests joining me live on the show. Sumant Sinha wearing his ASSOCHAM hat, Deepak Sood also from ASSOCHAM, talking amongst other things about expectations from the budget this year and what ASSOCHAM is hoping to see on the top of that list. First up, Sumant Sinha joining us here on the show.
The Union Budget of India, also referred to as the Annual Financial Statement in Article 112 of the Constitution of India, is the annual budget of the Republic of India. From corporate to the common man, everyone looks forward to the budget every year, expecting relief and reforms that would benefit them. What separates this budget from previous efforts is that it comes against the backdrop of great uncertainties about how the next fiscal year will unfold. Being less than 3 weeks away from the presentation date of the 2023-24 Union Budget, here's what our experts had to say about their expectations from the budget. Listen in.
Sumant, thank you so much for your time. Let's start by discussing perhaps the sectors that you feel, wearing your ASSOCHAM hat, need a boost as far as small businesses, SMEs and MSMEs go, and what can be done really to ensure that they get that boost?
I think that all the entire MSME sector actually could help with a boost. Look, I think the issues of the MSMEs are essentially that it's very hard for them to get really good market access. Secondly, they need to have standardization and quality inputs. Thirdly, they need credit on a regular basis, and they need information. And I think those are things that, while a lot of work has already happened by the government on trying to provide a lot of these issues to them, I think certainly more can be done as well. And I think therefore ensuring that MSMEs are better linked into the broader economy is something that is going to be very important for the entire MSME sector actually.
What kind of support exactly are you hoping that these small businesses get? Because on one hand, of course, you have the supply chain, and post the pandemic, there have been severe disruptions to that. There's the payment cycle, there are vendor issues. With all of these issues that small businesses grapple with, is it possible for you to pinpoint the 2 or 3 areas that you feel are most crucial when it comes to support for these businesses?
As I said, the government had come out of the scheme to provide better credit to the MSMEs. That's an area that can be potentially looked at further to see if there are any other schemes that can be devised that can take the credit situation more closer to MSMEs. I think the budget can really help address that in how to work with the financial sector to be able to get more credit in the hands of MSMEs. I think that would be the most important thing that the budget can look at doing.
So I want to talk about the ease of doing business and the single window clearance really as far as supporting small businesses and ensuring that the ease of doing business gets better. I want your thoughts on that. And do you think we are perhaps any closer to achieving that?
Single window system. I think, look, over the years, the government has eased up a lot of different areas with regard to opening companies, shutting them down, and how they get, has delicensed a number of areas. So there are most of the areas now in the Indian economy you can freely get into and freely get out of without really too many issues. So I think the whole issue of single window clearance and so on, that is something that is not that relevant any longer. Essentially now most of the government is working quite smoothly, and therefore I don't really think that there is a need for a single window clearance. I think for foreign investors, for example, that are coming into India, a single point of contact for them which can help to guide them through or navigate them through different areas of approvals and understanding of the Indian economy, I think that might certainly be useful.
We must discuss the PLI at this point, Sumant. and really trying to understand from you whether monetary extensions are expected, are needed, and what are the sectors that have benefited from this, because a lot of small businesses said they didn't really in that sense benefit from the PLI scheme. They weren't able to participate effectively in that.
Well, almost any manufacturing sector can benefit from a PLI scheme because certainly, whether you look at the whole area of textiles or renewable energy manufacturing or even things like toy making, battery making, electric vehicles manufacturing, there's so many areas. So I think the government has been very proactive in coming out of the PLI scheme for a number of sectors, but certainly depending on the availability of funding that the government has, depending on the strategic nature of specific industries or their export potential or their domestic potential, I think basis that the government can look at potentially extending the PLI scheme into a number of newer areas, and also in existing areas wherever there is an excess demand compared to the actual allocation of PLI funds, those PLI funds can actually be increased. And solar manufacturing, for example, is one such sector where there is more demand and where, for example, the allocation of PLI could be increased.
Make in India has gained, of course, a lot of traction, Sumant, but there still exist some gaps. And in your opinion, what are those gaps and how should they be fixed?
Look, I think Make in India is a very important program of the government because I think that the manufacturing sector in India is eventually something that has to grow a lot more. The manufacturing sector also creates jobs and therefore Make in India for both use in India as well as for exports is a very important aspect of really moving forward and progressing our manufacturing sector. Now, look, I think it's a very broad area. Lots of changes can be made in terms of improvement of ease of doing business in different areas, and frankly every sector will have its own specific requirements, and therefore it's really very hard to comment. But let me also say that some of these things are sitting in the hands of not just the central government but also the state governments. And so really to encourage Make in India, we have to have the entire system, the entire ecosystem of policymakers, all the way from local policymakers, local governments, all the way to state governments and central governments, all coming together to create the right enabling framework. So I think it is something that we have to look at on a more holistic basis and really take sector by sector rather than be able to give any overall specific answers.
Okay. I want to talk about employment and perhaps some of the reforms that you're looking at when it comes to ensuring employment and increasing employment really in the country in this year.
Look, I think the best reform for increasing employment is to look at some of the employment intensive sectors and trying to see how we can encourage those. Clearly manufacturing is one such area, but within manufacturing itself there are some elements, some areas which are more employment intensive. For example, textiles could be one such area. The whole issue of manufacturing in some other sectors could be considered as well. And then of course there are areas like tourism, for example, which also employs a lot of people all across the country. So how can we really encourage those kinds of sectors to really move forward faster, whether it's through giving them cheaper credit, whether it is through giving them certain other kinds of incentives. Those are all things I think that can be looked at with a view to encouraging those sectors that are most employment intensive. And I think that is something that the government, I'm sure, is looking at very carefully.
Sumant, thanks for your time. Deepak Sood joining me at this point. Deepak, as always, pleasure having you here on the show. And I want to pick up, from where Sumant and I really left off and talk about some of the gaps perhaps when it comes to making India's businesses self-reliant and achieving really the goals that we have set. What, in your opinion, needs to be done to fix those gaps, especially when it comes to making businesses more Atmanirbhar?
India has done well in its manufacturing, and when it has achieved the goals as were set out, I think the new ones have just started to open up again. Each state, each place in a country has a particular strength, and obviously we should use the strength of that local place, and that's where the investment happens, and that's how the investors normally choose a location which they want to. For any business, a location of its plant, its product at the right market is extremely important. India offers a very large market for most of the products that are made in India and then can be made for the world. Any company that would want to invest looks at a location which is cost effective, has people, cost of logistics, inward or outward, both are very crucial for them. So I think for Make in India, it is extremely important for us to ensure that the cost of doing business and ease of doing business continues to improve as we go along. We have come a long way from where we were, but I think we still have to continue to ensure that the competitiveness continues and more states offer better and better opportunity for investment from companies.
In your opinion, which states are doing well and which ones are lagging behind, and what really needs to be done perhaps to ensure that it becomes a level playing field and everyone's on par?
So there are two questions. Primarily, I think every state in this country is unique. It is a different region, different set of people, and each state should work on the strength of its own. So some states would be great on tourism, while the others would be great on manufacturing. Some would be great on adventure sports, and others could be very great on education. So I think every state should work to the potential that they have. The ones which are lagging behind, I think everyone has to really work on the people side of the capacity building, the pipeline that one is talking about. And obviously it ties back to the first question over national logistics costs and cost of doing business and cost of ease of doing business would be very crucial for all states to deal with.
Even as we talk about the ease of doing business, red tape and red tapeism really is a reality for a lot of India's small businesses. What needs to be done to ensure that that is fixed?
So I think it's become a fashion to continue to say the red tapeism. I think we have moved a long way, once again, like I said, digitization, formalization are steps that the government of India, the state governments across India has taken place. And I think we have moved a long way. Will I say that are we actually home? No, we are not. But it's work in progress and we're improving by every minute that goes by.
We have seen quite a bit of a decline when it comes to India's small businesses, MSMEs and SMEs. Not just the numbers that are being registered and the numbers operating, but also the turnover of these small businesses. What should be done to really fix that?
I think because of COVID, you would have seen this top line destruction and a bottom line destruction in the MSMEs. We have to be really honest with ourselves. When we do business, we need to be best in class and best in service. If any MSME who has not formalized itself, has not picked up onto technology on whatever line in business that you are, you will always be challenged by the circumstances. I think as we move along, as the business moves along, as the country grows, as the GDP grows, there's a huge amount of opportunity for MSMEs, especially to plug into the global value chains. This helps them to build best-in-class product with the right quality, standardized for the world, and here's a huge opportunity for MSMEs from here on.
What needs to be done to ensure that small businesses are really on a level footing when it comes to their larger peers, and the empowerment that the government has been talking about, ensuring that more and more of that really is being seen and felt by small businesses?
I think you're talking about the existing businesses which are growing and thriving. What is very crucial is that they should hire from the community that they serve or do the business in, the markets that they go to. They should have equal employment opportunities for men and women as we speak. Obviously, you will need to get talent from outside of the country, outside of the state or city that you work in. But a lot of people should be trained and hired from the ecosystem that exists.
All right, Deepak. So good having you here on the show. Thank you so much for joining us, Sumant and Deepak, to really talk about your budget expectations from this year's budget. I'll slip into a short break on that note. On the other side, someone who needs no introduction, Niranjan Hiranandani, joining us here on the show to talk about his expectations from the budget. Do stay tuned. Back in just a minute. Welcome back with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. And tonight on the show, we're in conversation with Niranjan Hiranandani to talk about his budget expectations, especially from the real estate space. Listen. that 2022 would be a stellar year after the 2 years that we've had. It's perhaps been a mixed bag for most, but what have your biggest learnings been, sir, from this year?
I would look at the learnings, not in the last 1 year, but the last couple of years. I think the challenges of the economy are big learnings that we see. And how do we see these challenges? We have had challenges of the COVID, where there was also a work from home. People couldn't reach the places of work or school or anything. We have challenges of the interest rate hike. I think that is and continues to be a big challenge. I think it was a challenge in order to get the execution of the projects. There's so multiple challenges. The beauty of this country has been the fact that we have more than met the challenges. We have produced the vaccines of the world. We've been able to grow the infrastructure and housing. People have bought more houses even at higher rates of interest and at higher prices. So all in all, we are a resilient country. Sure, we have difficulties personally and through the entire economy, but we are overcoming that. Great support from the central government, state governments and other authorities, but more so, I think the people of India are pretty resilient and have been able to face this trauma with excellence. Great learning about how we convert all these challenges into opportunities on the business side.
Could you call out the big trends as you see it in 2023 for our viewers?
2023 will be coming out of the recessionary trends which have taken place in 2022. People were all worried about it going down. I think the economy will take a turn in 2023 and start moving on the upward trajectory. Over a period of a year or so, as the Russian-Ukraine war will actually end or will get mitigated, can't continue at the level that it is now forever. And all those will make the supply end much easier. Petroleum prices will come into a norm. All in all, I think a turnaround will take place. India will continue to grow. The leadership story of India will take over the world, and the business of business will continue in a very, very positive way. I think there are challenges within that. Namely, we don't have actual skills for the purposes of the growth story of India. I think much more skilling is required to be focused on in order to take the situation and grab the opportunity for the future of India.
What advice would you like to share with the viewers of Leaders of Tomorrow?
I think entrepreneurs have to wait and watch and understand how to get into the new innovative ideas, pick up the gaps in the economy, find out which opportunities they can encash on, and be ready for the turnaround in the economy. Because this is the right of time where you can contemplate and make preparations, and then wait for an appropriate part to launch the project. As far as those which are ongoing entrepreneurs, obviously a more conservative view may have to be taken by some of the industries which are not growing at the same path, or for instance, if they are concerned to be export-oriented industries where there is recessionary trend in the countries in which they export, obviously that problem will continue. So all in all, within the country, it looks very positive. Outside the country, we have to wait and watch what happens to the war, what happens to the state of the economy of the Western and other countries where economies are dithering at this point of time.
I'd love to get your thoughts on just the show Leaders of Tomorrow and what you want to leave us with.
There's never one point as far as the leaders of tomorrow, leaders' quality is required. I think if you look at it as the most important, is to really have an understanding of what are the needs of all stakeholders of your business. So whether the stakeholders are your customers, whether they are your workers, whether they are your suppliers, whether you are your partners, whether they are your bankers, we have to always be cognizant of all the needs of each of these segments in order to do. Because if you have to grow in terms of a leadership, then you cannot say, I will not have capital, I will not have good interest of my all stakeholders, or I will not take care of the investment opportunities coming through our bankers. All in all, we need to have sensitization to all the stakeholders.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Pleasure's always having you here. Out of time in tonight's conversation. If you have any feedback for us, do let us know. Our details on your screens as we speak. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.